The advance of visual effects makes our job easier. When we first started in 2000, the resources were not available to us. Now it's become so sophisticated that we can create all kinds of substances and textures, and it is at the point where literally you can say, here's what I want, and you can have it.
You could definitely not have made this film 14 years ago. There's effects happening in this movie that are very contemporary and are state-of-the-art. So this film is very much a product of today's visual effects capabilities, which I did not have when I made X-Men 1, not even close.
You no longer need to limit your imagination. For Simon, for Bryan, when we're breaking stories and we're thinking about what do we want to see the characters encounter, or how do we want to dramatize that power, it used to be you had a governor on what you could imagine, and you don't have that really anymore.
It's quite a big chunk of the movie. Visual effects work probably accounts for nearly half the movie, about 1,400 visual effects shots.
Bang, falls, and then...
So basically, okay, so after the gunshot.
Yeah, the question is, what do we want to do? Do we want to pull out during the transformation or push in? My idea for Mystique was that she grows a version of you underneath her scales, and then she lets that version come out.
The visual effects work for Mystique was really complex.
Our transformations are actually quite slow. When Mystique's decided she's going to change into someone, on the inside of her skin basically changes into that person, and then the scales just flip over to reveal it. And we spent a lot of time trying to incorporate that into the scale flips and just trying to get the feeling that there was something on the scales as they came over. And then that same effect will turn up in the future Sentinels.
If Jennifer was turning from Mystique to her human form, we would need to shoot her twice for both parts of it. So there'd be the A side and the B side, and she'd always have to line herself up to herself, so the shooting process was always complex.
That's it.
Whatever I'm doing when I'm morphing, and we have to have that in a freeze frame, and then the person can see the outline of me and try to line themselves up, and I have to do the same thing if I'm morphing back into somebody, where we have to be in the exact same position where everything, you know, your eyes and everything line up so that they can do it correctly, and it gets tricky, but it's incredible that they can do it at all.
The most significant one was there's a transformation in the meeting room in Paris where she transforms mid-fight. We also had to get the choreography to line up, because obviously actors are not motion controlled. They're never going to repeat exactly what they did. So I think after about 47 takes, I think we got all the pieces we kind of needed.
What's up, Bryan? Okay, here we go. And bring up the wing, guys.
Originally, we had a Quicksilver scene that was Juggernaut. It was Juggernaut getting Eric out of jail.
I'm the Juggernaut, bitch!
Just sort of busting through, knocking down security, and it was very expensive for not a lot of impact. And Bryan came in one day and said, I have this idea.
I was on the phone with Mark Millar, who's a writer and a consultant at Fox. He was telling me about these fair game Marvel characters. There were characters that we could use in the X-Men universe, but then the other Marvel franchises can use as well. And he gave me a list of a bunch of them, and one of them was Quicksilver.
Bryan began to hatch this idea for a really visually arresting and original sequence, but it had never been done.
I had always wanted to shoot a sequence where you move so fast that everything around you is almost standing still.
He had this idea for him to run around the kitchen. And we had the right visual effects team with Richard Stammers and Brian Smurs, our stunt coordinator, second unit director, who just took that idea and ran with it.
Shot some photosonic work at 3,600 frames a second. We shot on a highly luminal set, which means the set was so bright that the actors had to keep their eyes closed most of the time, because you're shooting at such high speed, you need a lot of light.
We're gonna shoot this first shot at like 3,200 frames. So we're gonna test it in a moment. We're gonna give you guys sunglasses, so you're welcome to wear them. But it gets really, really hot, and it gets really, really bright in here, and it's not good for your eyes. So when we roll, we'll bring up the light to the right level, and then we'll shoot, and then we'll turn it off right away.
We shot super high speed with a stereo phantom camera to establish the rain sort of freezing. So we're shooting with real sprinklers, everybody's getting soaking wet, and then we slow that down even further with the post slowdowns. And then once it got to the point where it stopped, we'd take over with visual effects. And as Quicksilver moves around, he leaves this sort of wake of like a rain tunnel behind him. So there's a lot of careful animation and sort of fluid simulations that we had to do.
What Evan brought to it was the joy of somebody who has that speed. what's on his face, the exhilaration of, I can fly almost, was really what hit it home.
It wasn't until very, very late in the process that we saw the completed version of it with an audience and could feel their reaction to it. That's one that really got better as it went.
I wasn't surprised that it became the scene that everybody talked about because we were thrilled. I mean, once we saw it starting to come together, we were thrilled.
I thought the audience is going to want more of this guy, but you know, in this movie, he's just got to come and he's got to go. Next time, next movie, you might see a bit more of him.
Peter, take it slow.
We have a scene towards the end of the film which takes place on the lawn of the White House, and we couldn't go to Washington, but what we could do is build a big lawn with a big green box around it and do the scene there.
I actually scouted Washington, D.C. with our gang. We went around the whole city and just to understand the layout and the geography, but in the end, it made more sense to shoot it virtually. So we built probably one of the largest green screen volumes ever built in the world.
It was really tough to shoot. Obviously, the White House wasn't there and very little else was there. It was all visual effects, CG. And it was outdoors in Montreal in the summertime, which meant it was boiling hot and or raining. So it made the actual shooting of it very complicated.
The big green box. It was 200 feet on each side, 5 containers high, green screen, which we put turf down, put up the press boxes, and created that postage stamp of the White House lawn. And we shot all of the White House lawn sequence in this big green box in Montreal.
Choreographing a sequence was really helped by extensive pre-visualization. We did a lot of work on sort of finding our feet in terms of what the story beats would need to be, and as we did our previs animation, I actually got Tom Siegel, the DP, to be involved in actually filming the previs. And then we used a process called Simulcam, so when we were actually shooting, we had that previs available on set to play back through our monitors as a live preview. And that was a really important part of the process and actually really helped us immensely in terms of getting our visual effects to work so well with the live action.
So that when I do a shot of Richard Nixon up on a stage giving a speech, I can actually see our animated version of Washington composited with my real actor, my real grass, and my real stage. And I can go, oh, if I go over here, I get the White House. Or if I start on the White House, I can drop down and I can see him in the foreground. And if I didn't have that simulcam, I would just be guessing. But this becomes very precise, and you can really compose as if the White House really is out there.
The effects landscape has changed radically and exponentially and will continue to. And it's opened up tremendous landscapes for storytelling and for filmmakers and storytellers, particularly in this arena. There's no question that Days of Future Past was the beneficiary of that.